This is the Literacy Mindset Podcast, where education leaders discuss identifying and removing phonological barriers with Mindplay's CEO, Jeff Pendleton.
All right, well, welcome back everyone. Have my guest today, Dr. Chad Burnett, on the Literacy Mindset podcast. Really excited to have you joining the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Joining from Eanes Independent School District, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. That's in the Austin, Texas area, for those of you not familiar with Eanes Independent School District. Maybe take a second and give us a little introduction about, you and how you got to where you're at.
Yeah. So grew up in West Texas to a family of educators. So it's kind of one of those things, you go to college and you, in the mind, you're like, I'm not going to be a teacher. And then halfway through, you're like, I got to be a teacher. That's just what it's just where it's in my blood. So, had a very fortunate childhood of growing up. My mother as an educator, my grandmother, and a lot of family members. So seeing that and valuing that and tremendously respecting that profession. So at some point, it's like, I just have to. That's just what I got to do. Spent some time out there, came to Austin to do some teaching in Eanes at Westlake High School, and then kind of hit that administrative track, looked for a little something different. And me and my wife moved out of state, did some work in the Boston area, was a principal of a high school up in New England, and then made our way back. Missed Austin and decided to come back. And now I'm back and I'm here and working in the curriculum.
I love it. And I think that's a really good perspective. You started mostly in the secondary side, correct? And spent your time teaching there. But then when you went to Boston, you actually had a chance to get some hands-on experience with that. We'll talk about that in a minute. Can you just orient us a little bit to Eanes in general? Give us sort of size and a few other contexts.
Yeah, we are on the west side of Austin, as you said earlier. We have a little over 8,000 students. We're one high school district, 2 middles, and currently 6 elementary schools. We serve K-12. We're a public open enrollment district. Diversity is kind of, all a little bit over the place. We're growing in some areas. Some of our enrollment is dropping. We're predominantly a little bit on the higher end of the socioeconomic spectrum on things. However, just like the rest of the state, everything's diversifying. And kind of for us, one of the things we're really trying to manage and tackle is that neurodiversity piece, as our special ed and our emergent bilinguals and our special ed and 504 populations seem to be kind of growing. We need to redo some systems and rethink some things to make sure we're serving all of our students.
Excellent. Okay. No, that's really, really helpful context. Let's dive in and talk a bit about the curriculum experiences that you've had. Obviously, science of reading is a big sweeping thing across the country. Everybody seems to be talking about it. As a secondary trained educator who now kind of houses all things curriculum K-12, talk to us a little bit about where your experiences lend itself to understanding sort of this broad spectrum on the science of reading and instructional practices that it kind of brings to the district.
Yeah. So, all honest and transparency, as noted too, I'm secondary. I'm also math and science. So it's a little bit on the, 2 competing households when you talk about literacy. But I think in the end, when you really start thinking about teaching and learning as a whole, literacy is foundation to every content and every subject area. And then what's extremely important, and partway through my kind of career, is realizing its importance and foundation in early grades, and in particularly K to 3, K to 4, and I started realizing I didn't know a lot. So I went out, became a data coach, figured out how to be an instructional coach in elementary literacy and math, learned what I could, came back to the state, being in a leadership role since the Science of Reading Initiative or Reading Academy Initiative here in the state has launched off. So help kind of get our structures and our foundation around making sure our teachers are supported and have the knowledge and the content knowledge on how best to support all learners, in particular when it comes to literacy and early literacy within our districts. It is our priority right now as a whole. We've got really good systems around other places, and it's not that literacy doesn't, it's just that vital and that important that we ensure K2 in particularly, we have some really strong systems to help all of our learners be on level, catch them up when they're not, and intervene early and fast to make sure that we kind of can plug some gaps where needed. After COVID, that was something we needed to really tighten up, and we're working on it. We still got a ways to go, but that is a priority.
Right.
For us.
Okay. Oh, well, I'm excited to talk a little bit about intervention here in a minute, but you have sort of a unique experience. Not everyone in the education world has had the opportunity to kind of do it under the umbrella of different state standards or state initiatives. So going up to Massachusetts and, from Texas, now back to Texas, are there things that you feel like, universally everybody understands, essential reading skills the same way? There's no debate about it. Or are there things that you feel like you kind of learn about nuances between the two states and it really has helped you?
Yeah, I think there's some essential things. So the science of reading is based off of those essential things that I think we can, put them anywhere in any state. Learning English are good foundational practices and research-based stuff. I think what was an aha moment in Massachusetts compared to here it was a true example of when you set high expectations, even for littles, even your kinders and your first, even your, emergent bilingual learners or ELL learners, kids will raise to that expectation when you put the right support systems around them. And when you have that right interventions and the right kind of autonomy there so that teachers can do what's right for those kids. And so learning that and seeing that in place in a system such as Boston Public Schools, that was for me a eye-opening thing. It's a huge school system. I come from rural Texas, which, I had 33 kids in my high school. So you go there, 33 kids in a kinder class, and they have 6 sections of kinder classes. And so I think foundationally it's the same. It's that implementation that matters. And it's that teacher learning and their ability to do and have the resources at hand to meet the needs of their students. So coming back, one of the things we're focusing in on kind of related to that is truly developing a deep understanding with our teachers of what kids need to know and be able to do. And so the science of reading has led itself to that. But we also have a lot of internal conversations around our professional learning communities about understanding where, mid-year for a kinder, what should they be able to do? What should they be able to read? What sounds should they know? What letters should they know? And then how do we support when kids don't know that? What is our intervention? Not tier 2, not tier 3, not taking them out, but in that tier 1 setting, how do we support those kiddos that maybe are lagging behind or maybe just not there yet? And what's a true realistic pace for them moving forward? And how do we intervene early? So I think setting those high expectations and then helping teachers help students meet those high expectations has been kind of a mind shift for me over the last couple of years and how best to do that.
Got it. So are you suggesting then that you can take as a district the TEAC standards and almost apply sort of pacing guides to that and say like, okay, by the end of August, we want you to be here. By the end of November, we want you to be here. Is that kind of how you're thinking about kind of working in your PLC?
Yeah. So I think so our teachers, we've taken a couple post-COVID, we realized we needed it's not the sexy thing. And so I talked to a lot of other curriculum people that get it. And then when you talk outside of it, they're like, what are you doing? We really took a step back and really thought about what do we want our kids to know and be able to do? And when do we want them to know it and be able to do it? And then what is appropriate age level pacing for that skill? What is reasonable for the first quarter? What is reasonable for that second quarter? Which then lends itself to the conversation of, well, how do I measure that? How do I know that a kid's on track? How do I know that a kid has fallen behind? If they've fallen behind, that's where those levers come into play of like, okay, here's an intervention I know that is research-based. I'm going to pull in. I'm going to get this kiddo or this small group of kiddos, this is what they need. We'll get them back on track and they're going to be back on that pace. And so what I've realized coming back is spending a lot of times with teachers up front, developing that shared understanding has led to greater gains, literacy, math, everything in the school year, because the school year is so fast paced. You don't have a lot of time to have those important conversations. So we've developed some structures here where we pull teachers off and we do kind of our own TEKS based or even literacy based conversations around, okay, quarter two is coming up. What do our kids need to know? How do we know when they know it? What level should they be reading at? What activities, what things should we be putting in front of our kids to keep them on pace? To make that what we measure success here is what's called a year's worth of growth. And so if a kid starts with us at a certain level, we should have a year's worth of growth by May. Well, how do we measure that? How do we progress monitor towards that? And that includes reading, that includes writing. And so we do all things through the workshop model, and that's how it lends itself to doing that. So if you don't have a true understanding of the workshop model, those small groups, those partner works or peer works may not meet a student's need. So you have to have a deep understanding of what kids should be able to do to then tailor that so that it does meet the needs when it's diagnosed or when you figure it out through kind of your formative assessment process.
Got it. Okay. And so, still most of what we're talking about here is within the context of tier one, right? And we're working with and yep. trying to grab and catch things as we go. And I know you guys do a lot of your own sort of custom curriculum as you put core in place. What happens when you get into a tier two and a tier three lens? Can you kind of walk us through what that looks like?
Yeah, so K8, we have we call it win time. At the middles, we call it advisory, but it's what I need. And so what it is, every student in every grade, based on math or English and what their needs are and kind of where the teacher's determined focus is. So early elementary, K2, reading always takes precedence over math. So if there's a reading need, that win time turns into, it's about a 30-minute block daily of what that kid needs to catch back up or to get back on track within that literacy block. And so what our teachers do is they plan for their block, their normal instructional right. block. And then as that formative data or that diagnostic data starts trickling in, they meet routinely to say, okay, 5 kids need this. Chad, you're going to take these 5 during this win time. Here's what you're going to do with them. Here's that targeted skill that we need to work on. Great. They do that. They remediate it. It comes back. We come back to tier 1. Maybe they're back in tier 1 and maybe they don't go on an intervention group. Maybe they get next time to go into an enrichment group. And so we talk a lot about telescoping out to those needs. So tier 1 in classroom, our core instructions built around those grade level needs. But if a kiddo has below grade level needs, it's hard to do in tier 1, but we use that win time to telescope back down and pull them back up and try to meet their needs that way. Through a couple of phases of that, if that is not being successful, we then formally move them to what's our CSS staff, which is our true intervention okay. staff, where they have specialized instruction based on, hopefully at that point, we're getting close to perceived needs, perceived diagnostics of some neurodiversity. But we kind of phase that in over time. They may go through a cycle or two with those CSS staff. In our early grades, those are reading interventionists is their specialty. And then if they are not successful there, then they look at true kind of tier 3. Do we need a special ed evaluation? Do we need to move this kid to bilingual program? Do we kind of meet the needs based off of that?
Got it. Yeah. And as you think about that, sometimes what can happen in, your upper elementary grades or even in the middle and early high school, there can be some substantial gaps in the literacy skills, and oftentimes they can be foundational in nature. But what I find is that a lot of the secondary teachers don't really know how to teach foundational skills. That's not necessarily something that they have been trained in or think about a lot. So in the case that you just described, it's usually a CSS, a trained specialist that they'll go see, so we're not burdening the classroom teacher with having to teach the foundational skills when those gaps arise. Is that how I understand it?
Yeah. So in particular, like let's take an example. Let's say me in particular. Let's say I was a first grader and I'm showing some skills that are maybe below grade level a little bit. Sometimes those short, quick interventions get me caught up because I'm missing one little skill that maybe the tier 1 teacher can identify. But over time, if that intervention that tier 2 with a tier 1 teacher is not bringing a kid up, then we'd go to, okay, let's go to a more in-depth question. Let's pull in a specialist to help us review data. The specialist may say, you just didn't have the right skill set identified, or there's multiple there. Let's move them to tier 2. They come with me through a reading program for 6 weeks, and I can get them caught up faster than you doing kind of your 1-on-5 group. It becomes more 1-on-2, 1-on-3. The ideal is then they move back in. They transition back down into on-level win time. But we do know some students through that process then get identified with particular needs that then require specialized instruction, which then moves them into kind of special ed and that area.
Got it. Okay. Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about technology. I know it's something that put a smile on your face in our conversation as we were preparing here. You guys do a lot with technology. Kind of walk us through, what does it look like device-wise, and then maybe software and curricularly, how you think about technology?
Yeah, so we are a 1-to-1 iPad district, K-12. Kinder through 5th stay in the classroom. Okay. They don't go home until kind of the end of 5th, and then they start transitioning to that routine. 6 up keep their iPads all day. They take them home with them. They come back. Through the years, we've done some learning that K-5 have what we have developed is called a green iPad. It's got some very tight parameters and some structures on it. It's not wide open. They can't just get on Safari or Chrome and just Google anything. It is very tightly controlled to the point of we scope out what kids see on those iPads. And so that may be an app that is used instructionally. It may be a resource that we have deemed appropriate and give kids access to, but they can only see those resources. They can't add anything. They can't kind of manipulate and break that system. Middle school, we take a little more of the training wheels off. It's not a green iPad, but we we limit access to things such as YouTube and kind of, the internet and some of the things they can see there. High school becomes a little more open, go through there. We look at technology resources as how do they supplement or enhance teaching, not replace teaching. One of the things we foundationally believe on here is the relationship matters so much that we never want to get in a place where we're removing the relationship from the equation. That doesn't mean you can't use technology. Technology can enhance and do that, but we believe the one-on-one and the one-on-two and the classroom with the individual teacher there talking to kids is important. But what technology can do is help teachers become more efficient and more effective at their job if used correctly. So a lot of what we talk about is how can we use technology to meet those needs we know research shows help students grow? So feedback, getting collaborative structures in place, multimodal access to content. So not all kids can read at the same level, can access things at the same level. So can we give stuff to them using technology on multi-reading levels? So in science, when we talk about literacy a lot, we talk about low floor, high ceiling things. So how are we allowing all kids to access the content, but they can take it as high as they want to? We don't want reading level to be a barrier on content access. So we need to kind of shift the reading level of some of the materials, and we use technology to do that so that all students can access that content.
Got it. And it's unique. I don't hear it very often where iPads are being used sort of in 7 through 12. Any insight onto what drove that decision and why you like it, or maybe some drawbacks to it versus, a laptop?
Yeah. I wasn't here when we chose iPad, so I can't really speak to why the choosing of it. I like it when we talk about the creative side of things. And so when we talk about students producing videos, producing PowerPoint, not PowerPoint's a bad one, but presentations and things, I think iPads lend themselves greatly to production and creativity. Where it does limit us is we have to be very careful about parameters. They're very hard to control versus where I moved from, we were a Chromebook 1-to-1. That is easily controlled. They get in their Google account, and that's basically it. They can access a couple other things. Nothing's saved on the desktop. Nothing goes anywhere. It's kind of the end. I do like them a lot on the creative side. I do like them a lot at the high school level, surprisingly. It allows for such collaboration that it's just amazing to watch how kids can take their creativity, engage with each other, give each other feedback, and produce something that is just higher level thinking than I could ever even think of, like getting them to do it. And it's just amazing to watch. Elementary is a little different. You still got a lot of like, how do you use a device? How do you type on a device? How do you turn things off, turn things on when there's trouble? Because there's always going to be trouble. We're not on the internet. We get kicked off. Like, how do you ask for help? So I think that's why they live in the classroom. So we can always scope them out the way we need to, and we don't have to worry about going home and, something happening at home. They lend themselves greatly the same way with creativity. A lot of the products in curriculum that we do use, we have to ensure that they are accessible on the iPad and are easily used. And so that's a very long vetting process, so much so that we have our instructional technology group. They will have green iPads. And then when we look at stuff, they log in, they try to break it, they go through it. Do they not access it? Is it slow? Do pictures not come up? So it does put barriers to the time frame we can adopt something. But I think when we do, we've thought through kind of all those things, and a lot of our kids have a really great experience with it.
I love it. I love the thoughtfulness of it and how you approach making the most out of it. I always love hearing the different ways that people approach technology. You think about your role over teaching and learning, and then how do you create an environment of collaboration with your peers on the special services or special education side or the MTSS and intervention? There's so much that has to happen collectively there. Sometimes when they are holistically different departments, that can cause a challenge. Talk to me a little bit about how you ensure collaboration and in meeting curriculum needs.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to give credit to whoever did the hiring. We have a really cool team that really works well together. I'm giving myself a little pat on the back because I was part of that. But I think, people matter and relationships matter, as even with teaching. I think what is unique here that I have never experienced in any other district I've worked in is we do things collectively, even from the high level district goal setting lens. And so when special ed department is setting goals for the next year, they work with us to ensure we understand, we can support, and it aligns to what we're doing. So nothing is done independently anywhere. And so our district improvement plan is worked on as a department. We give each other feedback. We work through things. So when Matt Zemo, who's our director of special ed, maybe wants to go in one direction, we talk about it. We talk, what is that implications on the curricular side? When we want to say, hey, we're moving to this instructional model, we talk to them because it affects our collaborative classrooms. It affects our students that have pull-out services and what that means for their time with their pull-out services and in their gen ed classroom. So we are small enough. We still have to be really tight-knit. Sure. We are big enough that we can still departmentalize. So there's some help there that we got some support. But I think it's a conservative effort of like, we believe we are all teaching and learning. And so we're all just doing our part to improve the teaching and learning in all kids. And that takes all of us. You can't do that independently. So we work hard to align ourselves, align our expectations, align our goals, and work together to collaborative do that. I think one of the most important things, it's a perfect example when I got this role, we have special ed instructional coaches. We have like life skills instructional coaches. We have gen ed content coaches. When I got this role, I'm over the instructional coaches. I said, no, we're coming all together. Let's bring everybody together. We're all instructional coaches. So we do things together. And then last year, I'm also over our assistant principal kind of training, professional development. We also have special ed coordinators. I was like, bring the coordinators in, bring our APs in. We're all in this together. They need to hear what we're talking about. We need to hear what they're talking about. So I think you got to have people in roles that say it's important and make it a priority. And then when it is together, you've got to give them some meat and some time to actually collaborate and to trust and to respect each other's opinion and not think I'm in my silo, you do your thing, I do my thing. Actually, they do affect each other. And we work really hard because we don't want mixed messages. We know teaching is difficult. teachers have to do a lot of things. And so if we can come out of our department saying, here's the one thing we're doing next year, we're going to work on really well. And that means no matter who you are, we're doing this together. It's pretty powerful. It helps people breathe. It gives you space to absorb. And I think it's something that we do really well here.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I think that one of the challenges is even how we structure funding. When you have independent funding sources, it's not uncommon to find a special ed curriculum that gets purchased, and then maybe an intervention curriculum that gets purchased, and then the curriculum team's like, well, we have this curriculum that gets purchased, right? And the level of burden that can put on a teacher in a classroom can be high. So I love hearing the level of collaboration that can exist. Talk a little bit. We don't have a lot more time necessarily that we'll go into some things, but I'm going to maybe we'll scratch the surface on this. You mentioned something as we were preparing about the opportunity in front of us to get ahead of the AI wave of sorts. Maybe just give us some tidbits or some insights into what you guys are doing to try and stay ahead of the curve of what's coming down the pike with AI.
Yeah, so I think right now, our priority is using AI to give our teachers some support in the efficiency of their job. So what we did as a department is, you kind of lay out the task of, to be a successful teacher, here's all the things I need to know and be able to do. Just like our kids, they need to know how to write curriculum. They need to know how to grade tests. They need to know how to give, we could go on days with that list. And then laying down that list and saying, okay, where are we willing to let AI be innovative in that space, being safe in that space, and also allowing our teachers to have breathing room in that space? So when you say to a teacher, hey, start using using AI for some of your student feedback, it's not going to be perfect. It's never going to give the exact same thing you would do. And it's not going to say it the way you would say it. So, teachers kind of reluctancy. They're like, I don't want to get myself in trouble. I don't want to say, put a kid in a bad situation. But what is super helpful coming from the curriculum department is saying it's okay, because what we'll do is we'll own it. We'll say it's a mistake, and not that, we're not seeing harmful mistakes. It's just, it's not always perfect. It's not always perfect in its response, but allowing it to live there and owning that with kids of like, well, that's human nature too. I'm not always perfect in my feedback. I am not always efficient. So let's relook at this. Let's re-engage. And how do we process this? Allowing that to breathe where it needs to breathe, being tight where we don't want to do those things. So yeah, we're not going to do student grading right now because we're a pretty competitive community and we want adults and we want human eyes on it. Maybe eventually down the road it gets better and we do it. But I think what we got to do right now is we have an opportunity to get ahead of this. I think it's moving fast, but I do think it's in this realm of everybody still like, well, how do we engage? How do we pull this into education? What does it look like? How do we kind of figure this out? And I think in those situations, you can safely jump in and say, let's do it. Let's just figure out how it works. Let's kind of figure out where to use it. And you got to give some space to do that and give some teachers autonomy. So we've kind of realized that. And then instead of putting, I think, you're in the tech space. In education, I feel like when especially new technology comes out, we want to control it down to this thing that we understand. Right. And then we've taken the power away from it. It doesn't operate like it's intended to operate. We've controlled it too much. We've tried to put too many barriers and too many guardrails on it. And so I think for once, let's safely kind of pull those back and see where it takes us. Let's take a breath, do it safely, do it strategically, not sharing student data, not sharing student names, but we can dump a writing sample in there and see what it tells us. And like, oh, maybe that's pretty accurate. Maybe we try it with another writing sample. Maybe we try it with peers and kind of going through that. I could talk on this forever. I know you said briefly, so I'm still going on this, but I think the other piece is what we talked about earlier is the planning piece. Our teachers have used it I cannot tell you how many creative things they've done planning wise of just making life more efficiency, all the way up to the high school level in our AP Calc courses where they're like, I need to rewrite this test. I don't have time. Pump it in. They'll pump one out. It's like, oh, I just need to make a couple of tweaks, ready to go. What could have spent days for a professional learning community to work through? They've got a new version. They're rocking and rolling. We've saved them so much time. So that's where we got to find safe, strategic spots to see how this works and to really push the envelope and see how far we can go with this.
I love it. And I love that you're giving your teachers the space to go do that, because that's an important part of it. Well, let's, although we could talk a lot more about this. Let's go to a final question, which will give you a space to maybe continue on this thread. Everyone takes it a little bit differently, but I do love asking folks to pull out their crystal ball and talk to us a little bit about, what do we see 5 to 10 years from now, and maybe either go a lens of what won't change or a lens of something that you think for sure will change. Where do you see this 5 to 10 years from now?
Ooh, big question. I've got several tangents going in my head right now, but I'll try to summarize some of them. I think what I hope doesn't change, and I'm scared will, is the relationship piece.
Okay.
I'm scared we're going to rely too much on things and remove the teacher from the equation. And that's just a personal fear, sure. Not necessarily keep my job fear, but I just really worry that I think we sometimes forget kids learn best from people they really like. And I think when that's gone, that scares me a lot. What I hope is a hope for me is, as a educator, we are willing to do things differently. And I feel like in my job, I think we put up too many barriers on ourselves. I think we stop things from being innovative because we're scared. And we know we're dealing with kids, and I get that. We should be scared to an extent, but sometimes we get in our own way. And I just want us to take a step back. We got to change. We got to shift, or we're going to get left behind, and we got to do it quick. Sorry, I didn't know this would happen.
You can feel it.
I really there's a lot going on right now in education, and I'm afraid if we don't get out in front, we're going to be left behind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a stark take that is a good reality for us to think about, is what we can do to not get left behind. Dr. Burnett, I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you so much for taking time, coming on, talking about what you got going on Eanes, and I hope we get a chance to do it again soon.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Learn how we help students by identifying and removing phonological barriers at mindplay.com.